Are the Detroit Pistons finally making change? We're going to chat that and more in this episode of Pistons Intellect.
Passing lane, sky's a jam. Dynamite dunk and the crowd loves it.
Welcome back to Pistons Intellect. I'm your host, Jack Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack_Kelly_313. And before we get into today's show, if you're feeling so kind, please hit that subscribe button. We're about to hit 550 subscribers and continue to love pumping out Pistons content amid arguably the most toughest season to be a Detroit Pistons fan in forever. So appreciate all the support as always. Today, we're going to dive into a number of things. A few things have happened since my last video. As you can see, I'm in a bit of a different location right now, currently on a half vacation down at the beach. So bear with me if the audio or something isn't as good as usual. But a few things have happened since my last video following the Rockets game. And I'm going to get to the Pistons win, something that's an extreme rarity this season. I will get to that win in a minute, but the Pistons finally made a change. And I say change because we've been waiting for something. All we've had happen this entire season is a Kevin Knox signing. I believe that was sometime in November. And Monty Williams brought on a coach, which still don't think, I'm not even sure if I've seen him on the bench, but whatever. Nothing major has happened. And arguably, as I said, there's been an absolute disaster of a season. So for a trade to finally happen, I think Pistons fans felt something. I know when I first saw the trade, I live in Australia, so any breaking news that happens in the daytime on the East Coast or even West Coast, I'm typically a few hours later as I'm well asleep during the morning and afternoon hours of the US. So when I first woke up and saw the tweet that the Pistons were sending out Marvin Bagley, Isaiah Livers, 2 future second-round picks for Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscala from the Wizards. Whenever I see something from Woj or Shams, there's like this, when you see Detroit, you get this like glimmer of hope that something awesome might happen. And yeah, this was far from anything awesome. I understand the trade. And I think the first thing I want to hit on is just kind of, and this has been discussed at length now, so you've probably all heard this already by the time I'm recording this, but just how kind of a poor reflection this deal is on this front office, and in particular that Marvin Bagley signing. If we think back to Cade's rookie season 2 years ago, the 2021-2022 season at the trade deadline, the Pistons traded out Trey Lyles and I believe a future second-round pick for Marvin Bagley to the Sacramento Kings. And Bagley came to Detroit just before the trade deadline, just before All-Star weekend. And look, he closed out the season strong. He finally, the Pistons finally provided Cade, the rookie version of Cade, with some form of lob threat. And look, Marvin Bagley was good to end that season in arguably, I mean, it's fair to say that post All-Star break stretch for the Pistons and Cade's rookie season might have been the last time they played some form of decent basketball. And the front office rewarded him with a 3-year, I think $39 million contract at the time. So a lot of people weren't happy with that deal, thought it was an overpay, thought it was probably an overreaction to 15 to 20 good games. And those people were right. The Pistons end up having to trade 2 future seconds just to get off Marvin Bagley's. I guess he had the remainder of this season and $13 million next season. So Pistons had to trade future draft picks just to get off that deal to get back. Look, they get back a pair of veteran shooters in Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscala, who are each in their early to mid-30s. But the main reason for the Pistons doing this deal is, yes, they get some shooting in the short term, but ultimately the Pistons now create I think they can create the most cap space this summer. And they now have $60 million in expiring contracts between Gallinari, Muscala, Alec Burks, Monte Morris, not Boyan. But yeah, they have a ton of expiring money. But the fact you have to trade future second picks, which in 2026 and 2027, with the way this Pistons franchise has gone, they could hold some serious value. Yeah, it's not a good look from an asset management point of view. And look, Isaiah Livers is clearly struggling, but you kind of give up another second round pick in Livers, who, look, I know the fan base is extremely down on. He's had a horrible season. Who knows how much that ankle injury affected his training camp, but yeah, it's not a deal in a vacuum I'm going to lose sleep over, but I think it's just a reflection of some of the poor trades and asset management Troy Weaver has had along the way since becoming GM. It's no one's ever really knocked his drafting ability and his scouting ability, but it's trades like these where you have to send out picks as like very valuable second round picks just to get off money is not something that the worst team in the league should be doing, and a team in their fourth year of a rebuild. So anyway, I'll get to Gallinari and Mike Muscala now. Danilo Gallinari is 35 years old. This season, he's only appeared in 26 games, averaging 7 points, a few rebounds, 1 assist, and he's shooting 32% from three. But on his career, he's a 38% shooter. Now, I tweeted out, I wasn't too happy with this deal in the moment, but upon reflection, I think when you look at Gallinari's career, while he's extremely past his prime, he's a bucket. And I'm not expecting him to play. He might only appear in half the games for the rest of this season. But one thing I do know, look, he's a 4 right now. Back when he was more in his prime or just out of his prime, he was a 3 or a 4. But he's definitely just a 4 now due to his athletic limitations. He's coming off an ACL injury last season. So defensively, he's not going to give you much to it at all. I don't even know if he's much better than Boyan, to be honest. Maybe because he's a touch bigger, but I think he's a bit slower. So look, Gallo, in my opinion, is just going to come in and stretch the floor. I personally, unless he's really feeling it, wouldn't be the biggest fan of seeing him play more than, a couple of 4-minute stretches a game in each half, just because of those defensive limitations. But there's something to be said about clearing up that logjam at center, moving off Bagley, which now you're either going to play Wiseman at the backup center or you're going to give those minutes to Stu when Duren's off the floor. So, yeah, look, Gallinari, like I said, professional scorer in his heyday, coming off an ACL injury at the age of 35. Don't know how much we should be expecting, but once again, he's on an expiring deal. And, James Edwards, I believe, flagged that the Pistons, Gallinari and Muscala might be buyout options, but I don't think the Pistons can trade these two or will look to trade these two before the deadline. So I guess that brings me to Mike Muscala. He's been a role player his entire career. He's another guy who's a 4-man or a small 5. He's only shooting 28% from 3 in 24 appearances this season, but similar to Gallo, on his career, he shoots 38%. So another guy who can space the floor in theory. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see how much defenses defend these two, just with their age, how they're playing this season. Because teams still might just go, we don't care, we're just going to pack the paint on Cade, or we're just going to focus on shutting down Cade and Ivy's driving ability. We're just going to lock in on Boyan. Teams, I'm not fully sold yet that these guys are going to step on the floor day one and teams are going to be not leaving the corner while they're there. That's still have to see them in action. Muscala's 32 years old. And yeah, like I said, Muscala's never been a guy who would feature in a playoff rotation, in my opinion. I think he might have played some playoff minutes for the Hawks back in the day, maybe some for OKC. But yeah, I think nonetheless, he's a vet that can help this team and give you some stability at the 4 and 5 position. Someone who you might be able to play alongside Jalen Duren and help support him a little bit. So in summary, I think, look, this trade, there has to be more to come before this deadline. On the recent episode of the Hoop Collective with Brian Windhorse, Tim McMahon, and Tim Bontemps, I believe it was Tim McMahon said, and to be honest, this was the consensus amongst the three, was that when they were discussing the trade, if the Pistons are looking to use this money to sign free agents this offseason, they're basically saying they're fools. Or that's not the best plan for a team in the Pistons' positions with the market size and just how they're most likely going to be the worst team in the league. Can't imagine they're going to attract any free agents, especially in a weak class. They kind of alluded to the fact it just makes much more sense for the Pistons to make a trade with all this expiring money prior to the deadline. Now, OG Anunoby's obviously off the table. Pascal Siakam today, it was reported by Shams that the Raptors and Pacers are close. They're not close to a deal, but they've had advanced talks, and there seems to be some somewhat framework coming together for a deal. Not that I thought Siakam was ever really going to be a Piston, but that's a name you can probably cross off. Another name it feels like we can probably cross off is DeJounte Murray. The Hawks are looking for multiple first-round picks, which the Pistons cannot even do due to their pick owing to the Knicks. So for me right now, I mean, DeAndre Hunter's probably a name. I'm not even sure I'm that interested, but he seems to fit that 4 position nicely. If the Pistons were to go down that road. And obviously there's a Zach LaVine piece. Feels like he's just sitting there for the taking in a way. There's been multiple reports put up on Twitter and across anywhere you find basketball news, NBA news, that the trade market for Zach LaVine is virtually dead right now. It's never been lower in the sense of what teams are offering. So it feels like the Zach LaVine, if he's going to get traded, it's honestly going to come down to, I feel like how these things normally play out is it comes down to literally the last day of the trade deadline. So, yeah, look, the Hawks seem to be, Hawks and Raptors seem to be the 2 teams to keep an eye on this trade deadline in terms of sellers and teams looking to shuffle the deck. So players there who have sort of just mentioned could be options. And another one, which someone actually replied to me on Twitter, which I thought was not a bad suggestion, was the idea of Clint Capella. Now, I'm not saying you trade Jalen Duran, absolutely not. But I think Capella, at this stage of his career, look, how old is Clint Capella? He's only 29 years old. He's still averaging a double-double. It's kind of just what he does right now. Some of that might be a touch boosted because he's playing alongside arguably the best pick-and-roll player in the league, Trae Young. But Clint Capella has 2 years, $42 million remaining on his contract. That $22 million goes into next season. So he'd be an expiring next season. Look, depending on the deal, if you can bring him in as your backup big, I mean, as much as I believe in Jalen Duran, Clint Capella, I feel like would be an excellent backup big. You know, he's still probably a starting big in this league, but you can make something work there. I don't hate that. I really don't, because this team, obviously wings is a position of need. But yeah, I just thought that was worth bringing up because the backup big thing has been an issue for a while for a team that has so many centers. They just cannot get good backup bench minutes from the 5 position. And yeah, I'm just kind of not sold on James Wiseman. So anyway, I think that'll do for the trade buzz. I expect more to happen in the coming days, more rumors to continue to flow. I think we've got around 2.5, 3 weeks till the deadline. So I'm going to do my best to keep up to date with that. Let me know how you felt about the trade. What do you think is going to happen? And I was going to say, how do you feel about the front office? But I know how we all feel about the front office. I'd be surprised if many are in support of them. So moving on, the Pistons finally won another game. And it didn't take 28 losses for them to get to their next win. It only took 7 losses. So Pistons on Monday afternoon on MLK Day come to Washington, a place where I said in my last episode they'll probably lose by 20 because they always do, and actually won by double digits. And they beat a Wizards team that They obviously just made a trade with the Pistons a day prior, so both teams were missing a couple of rotation players. But nonetheless, Detroit come out and pretty much from start to finish were really good in this game. I'm not going to go through the entire game. I'd rather just touch on some players in this one, some standout performers. Alec Burks, he's not on the talking points here, but he finished with 34 points, which I believe is a tied career high, and was just on fire. He's been in some ridiculously good form of late after stinking it up for 20 odd games. He's rounding back into some form. And this is the time where you would really like to see the front office try and capitalize on his value right now. If I pull up his box score here, he's scored double digits in each of his last 10 games. And he's had 3 20-point games in those last 10. Obviously, the 34-point, probably 5 to 6 games of 15 points or more. And this is all, most of these games, he's only playing 20 to 22 minutes. So he's coming in, providing offense, instant offense. And that's Ellie Burks we saw for the first 4 games of the year, who was so pivotal in helping the Pistons get off to a good first week. So I just wanted to highlight him, and I really hope the Pistons, I would like to think his value is back up around the league now. And I think that is definitely someone the Pistons should be looking to move for picks or anything to help make them facilitate a trade for a bigger name player. And they need first round picks, whether it's the latest first round pick you can find. They just need picks to add into deals because, as I've mentioned, and a lot of Pistons podcasts have mentioned, the Pistons are really hindered by the fact that they owe this pick to the Knicks. And it just makes it tough for them to get into conversations for these really good to great role players and starting caliber guys in the league. So the first guy I wanted to touch on, though, from this Wizards game was Jaden Ivey. Now, since Cade Cunningham's stepped out of the rotation, or been absent, I should say, from the rotation while he's recovering, Jaden Ivey is averaging in 4 games, 21 points, 6.5 rebounds, 6 assists. He is still coughing up turnovers 3 to 3.5 a game, but he's also picked it up on the defensive end, at least from a disruptiveness and energy point of view. He's averaging 1 steal, 1.5 blocks, and just looking much more confident. Obviously, he's got the ball in his hands a lot more, but I think the key takeaway is Jaden Ivey needs to be involved more. That is nothing new to anyone that listens to this show and anyone who watches Pistons games on a regular basis. This guy cannot just be standing in the corner. And people will say, well, he turns it over a lot. And that's fair. But so does Cade Cunningham. But Cade gets all the reps in the world, as he should have more reps than Jaden Ivey. I'm not saying he shouldn't. I just think Jaden Ivey needs a chance to develop with the ball in his hands. His handle is not as good as Cade's, but you need to give him the opportunity while he's on this team to develop that. And I think whilst he's still coughing it up, he's still made some costly turnovers at times, even in this Wizards game. I just think that's just part of his development and growth. This guy is only in his second year, halfway through year 2. Like, he's not halfway through year 3. He's not in year 4. Like, he didn't necessarily come into the league as a pure point guard. I don't think he'll ever be a pure point guard, but you need to give him the opportunity to learn to create with the ball in his hand, because his first step is just too damaging just to have him standing in the corner for spot-ups or getting it every so often to sort of create an ISO situations. Like, let him operate in pick and roll. Like, that's one of the things that stood out to me. And there's a really nice possession in the Wizards game where I think it was in the last quarter, maybe the third quarter, ran a pick and roll, and he knew he had Koulibaly on his back, and he kind of went into his 2 steps to the layup. But on the first step, you saw him decelerate because he knew Koulibaly was on his back, drew the contact, hit the M1. Like, that's the Jaden Ivey we saw last season, and I just have barely seen that this year. So those little things are what I really love seeing from him. 3 ball is still a massive struggle. Past 4 games, he's shooting like 20%, taking 80 games. So the jump has definitely been a disappointment so far this season. He's had like few like spurts here and there where 3-game samples will shoot it well, but on the whole, that is an issue. Cade in the lineup or not, that's a massive issue. He needs to be able to shoot the 3-ball better to have a promising future on this team. So that's probably been the one letdown for me. Like I said, the turnovers don't actually bother me too much. I've liked seeing him get back into the mid-range, hit some of those mid-range pull-ups. He hit a really key one in the fourth quarter last night. So, yeah, there was some weird comments from Monty, and this was actually following the Rockets game 2 games ago, which I didn't address in that show. I honestly kind of forgot about it. But Monty basically said after the Rockets game, they had an organizational meeting, and basically one of the main talking points was Jaden Ivey having the ball in his hands more. And Monty basically admitted that he has to eat it and accept that, like, it's been a bad call from him to not have the ball in Jaden's hands. And he didn't say this, but I would dare say it had something to do with him only playing like 18 to 20 minutes a game. So the Monty thing continues to be very, very weird. Some of his comments about Jaden and his turnovers and that kind of thing, like I said, it just seems to be somewhat of a double standard at times. Just the way he talks about him, he clearly, I don't know if it's like a tough love kind of thing on Jaden in particular, but the way he talks about Jaden, I don't often hear him talk about Cade in the same sense with the way he handles the ball and stuff and his turnovers. So look, I don't know. It's a weird one, and I still feel like even though we're seeing this much better version of Jaden, what he's capable of, I still feel like there's something there that Monty just doesn't trust with Jaden. And like, look, maybe there's stuff going behind the scenes I'm not aware of. So I think for the sake of this episode, I'm just going to move on because there was another player, another young guy who's had his minutes and role mixed around a fair bit of late, and that was Asar Thompson. And against the Wizards, yes, it's the Washington Wizards. Yes, it's arguably the second worst team in the league, but Asar had one of his best games in, honestly, probably over a month. He finished with 14 points, 8 rebounds, 3 steals, 75% from the floor, and 27 minutes, which those 27 minutes were the most he's played since just before Christmas on the 23rd of December. And I just want to bring up around a minute here of Asar's highlights from yesterday's game, because I think some of the things I want people to keep an eye on just in this film is just where Asar's kind of receiving the ball here, handoff around elbow extended, and just allows him to attack downhill, finish with a nice spin move in M1. Obviously, Daniel Gafford's not there to provide rim protection and gets around Corey Kispert with these here. Once again, top of the arc, easy blow by, not in the corner, which is like where so often feel like he's been stationed. Here, I love this. He attacks the space and draws free throws. Instead of settling for that wide open 3, he just attacks the space ahead of him, uses it as a runway to get to the rim. Here, Pistons give him the full after the pick and roll. Jaden Ivey gets out of the way, and they open up that whole left wing for Asar to attack and eventually find J.I. for the assist. Once again, just receiving the ball in and around the painted area, not in the corner. Here, he comes up from the corner, lifts up, gets the handoff. Once again, attacks downhill, beautiful left-hand finish. And you can tell he has confidence. Like, Asar's not the best finisher efficiency-wise, but when he has confidence, he has such nice finishing touch there. Patented Asar Thompson steal on the drive from Denny. And then I don't know why Denny closed out then, but the one time Asar is in the corner, the Wizards close out and he hits Stu with a beautiful connective bounce pass. And then here, perfect way to end your best game in a while, just with a strip of Jordan Poole and a dunk to punctuate the game. And then finally, this one here, attacks from the corner, attacks the closeout. And that, funnily enough, has probably been, apart from wide open shots at the rim, that has been one of Asar's go-to moves throughout the season, has been that sort of floating jump shot around 8 to 10 feet from the rim. So really good game from Asar. Part of me feels like that minutes increase was largely due to the change in roster with Isaiah Livers and Marvin Bagley both gone. But look, he came off the bench. I don't care if Asar starts or not, but I just want to consistently see him play 25 to 28 minutes or more a night. I know there's spacing concerns, but if you can get him in positions like you had him in those clips where he's attacking downhill and is receiving the ball on the move from handoffs, I feel like, one, it gives him confidence, and two, it just accentuates all of his best traits on offense right now. So I think the thing to really highlight from that film was, once again, that play where he's left wide open, but instead of jacking up the wide open three from kind of the free throw line extended, he attacks the open space and uses it as a runway, and just leverages that with his elite athleticism to just get to the rim and draw free throws. So loved Asar's game, and I hope he can string a few good ones together here to get his confidence back, because he truly was one of the bright spots in the first 10 to 15 games. So I think where I want to close today's show out is just Isaiah Stewart's impact since returning. He returned against the Rockets after missing 8 games with a big toe injury of some sort. And in his 2 games back, he's averaging 16.7 boards, 1 block. Efficiency is still not great in these 2 games, but he's shooting 43% and 30% from 3. But I think, look, it's probably to be expected after a lower leg injury. Maybe it's going to take him a minute to get back. He's taking a lot of threes, so whilst it's still not good that those percentages are low, I think he's finishing inside around the rim still what it probably was before. Since coming back, he's been a +5 net rating. And I touched on it last game. Just having him back alongside Jalen Duren helps him a ton. Just cover up Jalen's mistakes. They kind of help cover up each other's mistakes. Stu's the better interior post defender right now. And it allows Jalen at times to kind of float around and go for block shots. So offensively, that's still a massive work in progress with those two. It is fun when they hook up with their passes and find each other for little assists around the rim. I love seeing that. But just in terms of an offense working with those two in it, I touched on this on the first 5 games of the season. In a vacuum, when those two do things together, it's really cool and it looks fun. But if you zoom out and you kind of have to feature them in the offense for it to work, that doesn't work for me right now. I don't think that works when you have Kay Cunningham in your team. Like, you can't be kind of having them as some form of focal point. It's in the sense of fact that they don't have the ball. You can't have it that they're just negatives together, because Stu's, unfortunately, shooting isn't up to scratch yet. But I think just having him back's been huge. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was kind of that stretch where Monty went with him as the sole 5 throughout the end of the third and start of pretty much a lot of the fourth, and the Pistons are making a key run. Just seeing Stu play the 5 and play well, and the team do well. I think I would like to think, hopefully Monty can look at that and go, maybe we should just use this guy as a backup 5. I mean, I don't know if they're trying to, Wiseman has been fine, but I just think Stu as your backup 5, that's where he's going to end up ultimately. And I think that's his perfect role on this team. Even if he's still going to start at the 4 until the Pistons can figure out, prior to the trade deadline, who they're trying to play. Even if you still want to start him at the 4, but then have him sub out early, then come back in for JD with 2 minutes to go in the first, and repeat the same in the second half, and then you can maybe close with those 2. But I think Stu's impact's been felt. Pistons, look, the Wizards still score 117, but feels like the defense has gotten better since Stu's come back, and shouldn't be a surprise. But man, it's good to see. So I think that's going to do it for today's show, guys. I've gone pretty long here. Today, probably by the time you're watching this, the Pistons play the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I believe it's at LCA. So that should be an interesting game. I believe as well, Kay Cunningham's, it's been roughly 7 to 10 days since that injury against the Wizards, the Nuggets, my mistake. So we should finally start to hear. I would like to think we'll hear something from the franchise or the front office soon on where that injury's at. So I should be back tomorrow for a recap. But until the next video, as always, go Pistons.